Hi, this is Eve with True Crime and Coke. You are about to listen to an EDUsode. These are shorter episodes dedicated to educational information ranging from forensic terminology, crime facts, body processes, to interesting FBI files. But if you want to hear about true crime, disappearances, conspiracies, hauntings, and anything strange or unusual, then go to a regular episode. Disclaimer, I am not associated in any way to the criminal or medical field. In other words, I may not even know what I'm talking about. Now that that's out of the way, let's begin. Hi, welcome to part 2 of the Samuel Little EDUsode. I will get into his background, some of his quotes about how much he loved to kill, and let's get started. The information for this EDUsode is from the article The Serial Killer and the Less Dead. The only reporter who's talked to Samuel Little tells how he was caught and why he almost got away, and is by Jillian Lauren, and it was dated December 20th, 2018. I'm not going to read you it word for word, but I will summarize it because there are some very interesting facts and quotes in this. But it is a reporter who interviewed an LAPD investigator asking her what her most memorable or special cases were. And she replied that they were all special, but that she'd caught the serial killer Sam Little, and she really felt good about that. So this reporter went back home and did some research into Samuel Little and found out what we found out on the previous EDUsode, which was how he got caught and that now he is linked to a lot more murders. She corresponded with Samuel Little while she waited for her visitor's pass to be approved, and once it finally was approved, she brought a bag of quarters so she could buy him some Funyuns and Little Debbie's. This is her description of Samuel as she saw him. Little was wheelchair bound, suffering from diabetes and a heart condition. He wore standard prison issue shapeless denim pants, a blue t-shirt with CDC printed on the back, and a pair of white orthopedic sneakers due to a toe amputation, probably from the diabetes. The tail end of a baby pink heart surgery scar the size of an earthworm peeked out from the top of his tee. He had a thinning pelt of white hair and a beard to match. Age spots discolored his skin, giving him the appearance of a molting lizard, but I could see the evidence of the man he had once been, a 6'3" powerhouse with catcher's mitts for hands. I could still make out the strong cheekbones, pale blue-green eyes, and handsome face that might once have put his victims at ease. Little wagged a finger at me. "You!" he said. "You're my angel come to visit me from heaven. God knew I was lonely and he sent you. You want a story? Ooh-wee! Do I have stories?" We talked that first day about our childhoods, about my kid, about his family tree. We talked about his teenage mother abandoning him as an infant by the side of a dirt road. We talked about his late long-term girlfriend Jean, who'd been a master shoplifter and supported them that way for years. We talked about how he liked to travel. We talked about his art. He had learned to draw during his first prison stay. 3 years robbing a furniture store in Ohio in his 20s, and it is still his preferred pastime. She asked him what he liked to draw, and he said girls or women or ladies. He was trying to kind of find the term that was least offensive, and he said that he could paint or pencil whatever she wanted. And I will quickly sum up a day interview. He said that he lives in his mind now with my babies. In my drawings, he said, the only things I was ever good at was drawing and fighting. So he is talking about his babies being the ones that he killed. So drawing them. And then eventually he said, "Little miss, you want to hear about the first one?" "She was a big old blonde," Little said. "Roundabout turn of the new year, 1969 to 1970, Miami, Coconut Grove. She was a hoe." Then he corrected himself. "A prostitute." She was sitting at a restaurant booth, red leather, real nice. She crossed them big legs in her fishnet stockings and touched her neck. It was my sign from God. And with that, he began to tell her about all the women he killed. He thought he remembered approximately 88, give or take a few, and then he went on to tell her about a couple of dozen astonishing details over the next month. Little considered himself some sort of an angel of mercy divinely commissioned to euthanize, and sometimes he believed he was the devil. So obviously I can't get into every single murder that he's done, but let me at least tell you about the murder of Denise Brothers, and you can kind of get an idea of what was in his head. And one thing I will tell you is Denise Brothers was a white woman. Samuel Little is a black man, and he's going to eventually change all the statistics of serial killers that they have already thought that they established. Here's Denise's story. He said he was driving in his Cadillac, which had a blue fabric top, when he saw her walking and she gestured for him to pull over. She was hunched and shivering inside her coat. He pulled over and, unfortunately, Denise got into the car. He said that he bought a bunch of crack and black tar heroin for her and her pimp, who'd joined them to get high. Afterward, the pimp cheerfully patted Denise on the ass and left her with little to pay the bill in trade. I told her I was an artist. She was a spicy one. I told her I could draw her so pretty like Van Gogh. He cracked himself up with that one. I told her she was beautiful. I said, I love you. He said that he told all of them that he loved them, and he wondered how it sounded to them coming from this trick that they just met. Maybe it sounded strange and sad, but also sort of sweet, or maybe they just wanted him to shut up and get it over with already. He pulled into an alley, and as she prepared to give him a blowjob, he grabbed her by the throat and tossed her over the seat like a doll, where he strangled her with one hand while masturbating with the other. When she fought, he fought back harder. Because killing was synonymous with sex for him, Little said he made the encounters as long and slow as possible, often letting his victims repeatedly regain consciousness. The last time Denise came to, her head was in his lap, her eyes big as marbles. At that point, he stopped to tell the reporter that her eyes were about as big as hers were right now, smiling when he told her that, and of course, he was getting a thrill about telling this story and telling it to a woman and seeing her partially frightened. So, of course, he was getting stimulated by that. Then he said that he told her, I own you, you're mine forever. And then the victim cried, and he kissed the tears from her face, then squeezed the life from her. The reporter asked, why do you feel you need to own women? And Little replied, I wanted their helplessness. All I ever wanted was for them to cry in my arms. The reporter said, if that's all you wanted, why didn't you let her live? Well, you got me there, he said. Maybe it wasn't all I wanted. He told the reporter that no one could understand how much love was in his heart for the women he killed, his babies. Even though he felt bad about the pain he put his victims through, thinking about them was the only thing that made him feel alive in his dank cave. So day after day, he lay alone and replayed the killings, drawing his babies from memory when he could get his hands on a pencil. The reporter asked, how did it feel to kill them? And he replied, ooh, it felt like heaven. Felt like being in bed with Marilyn Monroe. He said when he was a child, he didn't realize they were humans who ate and slept and shat. He thought they were angels. When he talked about the murders, he lit up like a kid on Christmas morning, becoming animated and performing an elaborate display. He hugged himself and made kissing noises with one outstretched arm, and then he also demonstrated just how much force it took to crack a hyoid bone. So this was obviously a very shortened version of her many hours of interviews with Samuel Little, but you kind of get an idea of where his head was at and the joy he gets in telling and remembering his murders. And also, it's just, you have to remember when you see pictures of him now, he is old and exactly the way she described how he looks, but he was a very big guy, 6'3", big old hands, and he was a pretty attractive man, so it was probably very easy for him to lure those that were very desperate. Samuel Little's arrest history begins in 1956 with the theft of a bicycle, for which he was sent to the Brutal Boys Industrial School in Lancaster, Ohio, Over the next 6 decades, he was repeatedly arrested in Ohio, Maryland, Florida, Maine, Connecticut, Oregon, Colorado, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Arizona, Georgia, Illinois, Missouri, and California. The list keeps going on, and charges included burglary, breaking and entering, assault and battery, assault with the intent to rob, assault with firearm, armed robbery, assault on a police officer, solicitation of prostitution, DUI, shoplifting, theft, grand theft, possession of marijuana, unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, resisting arrest, battery, false imprisonment, assault with great bodily injury, robbery, rape, and sodomy. When all the math was done for this, he had served only about 10 years altogether. So, in September 1976, Little was arrested in Sunset Hills, Missouri for the rape, assault with great bodily injury, and robbery of Pamela K. Smith. She'd shown up hysterical on a stranger's doorstep after escaping Little's car and running nearly naked through the night. Her hands were bound behind her with cloth and electrical cord. Little had strangled, bitten, beaten, and sodomized her, but he was convicted of the lesser charge of assault with attempt to ravish and served only 3 months. Yes, that's what I said, 3 months for assault and rape, when he had served 3 years for robbing a furniture store. And also in September of 1982, the nude strangled body of 26-year-old Patricia Mount was found in Alachua County, Florida. Witnesses identified Little as the man last seen leaving with Mount in his brown Pinto station wagon. Hairs found on the victim were similar to Little's. He was tried for the crimes, but due to a lack of definitive physical evidence, the jury acquitted. The following month, the remains of 22-year-old Melinda Lepre were found by a groundskeeper in a cemetery near the small Gulf town of Pascagoula, Mississippi, 3 weeks after her boyfriend had reported her missing. A disarticulated hyoid bone and fractured cricoid cartilage indicated strangulation. Witnesses identified Little as the man with whom Lepre had been seen getting into a brown Pinto station wagon. 2 prostitutes interviewed during the investigation, Hilda Nelson and Layla McLean, revealed that Little had assaulted and strangled each of them, though only Nelson had reported the crime. Each provided eyewitness identification. Little was arrested for Lepre's murder, but the charges were ultimately dismissed owing to lack of physical evidence and a vague rumor of witness tampering. In October 1984, Little was caught by San Diego patrol officers in the act of beating and strangling Tanya Jackson in the back seat of his black Thunderbird. He was charged with rape and assault with great bodily injury. The San Diego police connected him to a September 1984 attack on Lori Barros, who had lived to tell the tale by playing dead after being strangled and left by the side of the road. The cases were tried together with added charges of false imprisonment. Little pleaded guilty to 2 counts of assault with great bodily injury and 1 of false imprisonment. He received a 4-year prison sentence and served only a year and a half before being paroled in February of 1987, after which he traveled 125 miles north to his old stomping grounds of Los Angeles. There, he shacked up with his long-term girlfriend and continued his rampage of theft by day and murder by night. Over and over, authorities had him. How could this have happened? Well, how it happened was that a judge in Missouri thought 3 months was an appropriate sentence for rape and assault. And how it happened was that he chose to dispose of victims that society already considers trash. He had no address, no registered car, no credit card. He would leave at a moment's notice. He was just constantly on the run from state to state to state. And he was a very slippery mofo. They were still able to catch him because he had his Social Security payments put on a prepaid Walmart card. And they traced that card and found that he was in Louisville, Kentucky. And this was in 2007. And this is when they arrested him for a narcotics charge. And they wanted to keep him, and this is when the whole thing of entering the VICAP information comes to play. But the hardest thing would be to get a timeline of when everything happened. This was 35 years, and he has done so many violent crimes. And to remember all those little violent crimes, and it would just be very hard to remember and put a timeline together. So that was their biggest problem. So that's why it helped that Samuel Little started drawing his angels, and they began to track down some of the victims that were not identified. And in doing this EDUsode, I don't even know where to start or where to end, or I even got lost during it because there's just so much. So you really need to go to the FBI website, type in Samuel Little, and they have all the sketches that he has drawn of the women that he killed, and the law authorities still need help identifying. So I definitely recommend going on there. It's really neat. It has a map with markers on where he's been, where possible victims are, and the sketches aren't just a sketch. Have you seen some silly looking drawings of criminals or the suspect that are oh my goodness, it looks like a 5-year-old drew? Well, his sketches of these women are absolutely amazing. They are in vivid detail. He kind of remembers earrings, the way their hair was. If they had a hooked nose, or if they had a recessed chin. He remembers all that, and he can also remember what they were wearing. So that just goes to show you how much he enjoyed each murder, and he probably really means it when he says that he loves every single one of them. They are his angels. He probably truly does mean that, for him to have the memory in such vivid detail. So I will end this EDUsode because I'm confused. I don't know where to start or end or anything. I will play his recordings of him talking about some of the killings, and you can hear the joy in his voice, and you can see videos on YouTube of him doing the interviews, and I'm not gonna lie, he looks like a guy that'd be kind of fun to sit down and talk to. Unless, of course, you encountered him 20 years ago. And when I talk about statistics and Samuel Little changing them, it's because he is a black man, and they've always thought that white men made the majority of serial killers. So it makes you wonder just how many more Samuel Littles are still out there and not accounted for in statistics. And also, usually races kill within race. His were not all black female victims. He had a transvestite as one, as you will hear in the audio clip. And of course, I think that also has to do with opportunity versus him sticking within his own race. But I think there will be a lot of things that end up changing after everything is said and done with Samuel Little. I apologize for all my horrible Samuel Little talking impressions. Sometimes I just can't help myself. And again, I can't promise that I won't do those types of voices in the future episodes. And I will leave you with his recordings. And until next time, have a good evening.
Hey, tell me about Northern Kentucky. The girl that you met in Columbus. So you meet this girl, I guess you're at a strip bar downtown Columbus.
I went on my car, and this white girl come out behind the building. And I'm in my trunk. She walked over to me, say, come on, y'all, can you take me to Miami?
Describe this girl to me. She white, black, what's she look like?
She was white, blonde hair, dishwater blonde, they go. It's short.
Short, like shoulder length?
Yeah,
or
no, ear length, a little over his ear length.
Like a bob?
Yeah, like a bob.
Okay, and how tall do you think she was?
She was about 5'7".
How much do you think she weighs?
She weighed about 130.
How old do you think she was?
Oh, she was about 25.
Okay. You mentioned before that you said she kind of had like this hippie aura to her.
Yeah, she did give you a hippie feeling. I think she was some kind of hippie, yeah.
So you go to Cincinnati, you mess around on Vine Street, and then eventually you guys both get in your car and you cross over the bridge into Kentucky. Tell me about going into Kentucky.
We got to Covington, and then we continued through Covington. And there was a park that they were having a festival there. And she heard the music and shit off of that band in there. And by her being a hippie type, she wanted to get to that. But the police came over and peeked in our car. He really wanted me to move out of there. So we, instead of going in there, I took her the other way.
Right.
Winding around, they got hills out in Kentucky, and the road winds around the hills. I seen a little short road going up the hill. And up top there was vegetation, wasn't no houses or nothing. And so I pulled up in there and concealed the car in that little vegetation up there on top of the hill.
So tell me about this road that goes up the hill. What kind of road is it?
It was like a dirt road.
Okay.
It was like dirt. The grass was growing in the middle between two tracks. When I left her up in that little road up there, on the side of that little road, she was like partially concealed by the vegetation. And I left her there.
Las Vegas. Describe the Las Vegas victim.
That was in '93.
Okay.
I bought a Eldorado.
What color Eldorado?
It was a yellow.
Okay.
Oh.
Yellow Cadillac Eldorado.
Yep.
All right. What year?
78.
Okay. Well, tell me about this girl. What does she look like?
She was kind of thin, dark skinned, about 40 years old when she was out there hustling. I think she was a drug addict because she wouldn't have been out there.
How tall was she?
She was about 5'5", 5'3".
And how much do you think she weighed?
She weighed about 110, 120.
Okay. What about her did you know?
The boy came, that was her son. And she called him over there. And he came over, hey, he shook my hand and everything. Yeah.
Now, how old was he?
He was about 20 or about 19, 20.
Okay, black male or?
Black male.
And where were you at when you met her?
It was on Owens Avenue.
Okay.
Owens, that's down in the black section. Owens and Jackson.
Where do you eventually take her body to?
I was headed toward California. So as I drove out of Las Vegas, I seen a motel and a road leading up to the motel. And there's a lot of bushes and brushes beside the road before you got to that motel. That's where I dropped, pulled up her body out and rolled it down there. And I heard a secondary roll of noise. That meant she was still rolling.
So you basically roll her into a pretty big ditch that's got a bunch of...
Well, it wasn't a ditch, it was a slope.
Okay.
That didn't look like a slope because the vegetation had grown up out of the slope and looked like you would think that the road would just be flat. But actually the road was going down, a slope like. And that's why she rolled.
So this is a slope right off the road?
Yeah.
Okay. And tell me about how far do you think you were outside of Las Vegas?
The road I was on was going towards Searchlight. So whatever the name of that road is, that's the road I was on.
How far outside of Las Vegas do you think you were? Were you in Las Vegas?
I was still in Las Vegas, yeah.
Okay.
But I was on the very outskirts.
All right.
The very outskirts. There was a couple of motels I remember, gas stations, and it was scattered, because it was getting thin population as you go further out.
Tell me about Mary Ann.
She's what you nowadays they call a transgender.
She's a black male dressed up as a female. Okay. How tall is she?
Mary Ann's about 5'7", 5'6". She weighed about 135.
Okay.
Maybe 140.
And how old do you think she was?
She was 19.
Okay. And where was she from?
No, Miami, down in Liberty City.
Okay. And did she, you'd mentioned before she had a boyfriend, or she talked about a boyfriend?
Named Wes.
Wes?
Yeah.
And tell me about where you met her at.
I seen her down at the Guar on 17th Avenue, and she had on a short cream miniskirt, cream and red. So then this opportunity popped up, take her to the store.
Right.
Instead of me bringing her back to the apartment, I went down 27th Street. That's going down to Fort Lauderdale, called the Alligator Alley. It runs into the Alligator Alley.
Right.
But the further out you get, the further you get out of Miami.
Right.
And you got vegetation in there.
Now, how far outside of Miami do you think you were?
It wasn't too far to Miami, right there. I was in my stepdad's car, Pontiac Le Mans.
Now, where'd you take her to?
Continue down 27. Got back on 27.
Going outside of Miami. Okay.
Miami.
Going away from Miami.
Going away from Miami. We got down past the let's say limits. So I continued on toward Fort Lauderdale, and I seen a road going off the main road back into vegetation on the left side. So I got her out of the car, pulled her out, and drug her into the growth back there, and pulled her deeper into there's a path, a little path was running somewhere. I don't know where it led it to, but it was running deeper into the undergrowth. It's like Everglades like that. And we ran into some water running. But before we got to the water, the earth was mushy. I turned her loose, and she fell into it face down.
And how far outside of Miami do you think you were?
About a mile, 2 miles.
What year did Marianne occur?
72.
Okay, 1972.
She was pretty, a light-skinned, brown, honey-colored skin. And she was about she was tall for a woman, about 5'8", 5'9", and beautiful shape, and she's friendly.
And how much do you think she weighed?
She had a beautiful body, a beautiful 150, well put together.
And how old do you think she was?
She was about 30.
Okay, and she's a black female.
Yeah.
And tell me where you met her.
I met her in a nightclub in New Orleans. Her and her sister she had two sisters. Her and her youngest sister was having a birthday party. Her sister was dancing with this guy on the floor. And when I come in, the girl that I was with offered me to dance with me. And while we were dancing, she says, you want to go riding after this, after this party's over? We walked outside, and she looked and seen my car at Lincoln. She said, ooh, that's a beautiful car too. So she had arm in arm, walking to the car. We got in, stopped at the gas station. We were on the Highway 10 and going toward Slidell. I seen the sign say Little Woods. So I took off the exit, and that sure enough was a road leading into the woods. And we went in and parked. So we finally got to where we were going, and it was by a bayou, a river, a little water thing, and the big, they had a machine out there in that little river.
Dredging? Okay.
I grabbed her by the legs and pulled her to the water. That's the only one that I ever killed by drowning.
Describe the location where she's left.
Okay, I left her with her head still there in the water. Half her body in the underwater, and her thighs and legs on the bank.
North Little Rock. Tell me what that girl looked like.
Oh man, I loved her. I forget her name. Oh wait, I think it was Ruth.
Okay.
She was a heavy set, big old yellow gal, and had buck teeth. It had a gap between the teeth, that's what it was. And she was light, honey colored skin, and she had like her hair was not really long. It was.
How tall do you think she was?
She was about 5'7".
How much do you think she weighed?
She weighed about close to 200, about 170. 180.
Pretty big girl.
Yeah.
Right. Now, where did you meet her at?
Okay, down there in the crack house. Her and about 6 other girls were sitting on the porch. The dude selling crack in there. I stopped to go in there. I seen the girl. That's why I stopped. We stayed together 2 days or more. I think about 3 days. We was going shoplifting. We went to Sears. We went to Kroger's, and that's where I got busted. Mm-hmm. They took me to jail, and she went and stayed in the car. And the manager of Kroger's, I guess he got tired of her laying on his property in that car. He called the station where I was at in North Arkansas to drop the charges. Mm-hmm. So he can come down and get this gal and car out of here. They cut me loose. So we was headed toward with that place where Walmart's original store bent. I whooped off the road and back into that little woods. It was a cornfield back there. I pulled through it, and on the other side of the cornfield was a trash pile. I parked the car facing out where I could see anybody coming in. So I pulled her out of the car. She's too big for me to carry her. So I just pulled her out of the car and laid on that trash that was lit there.
So was it like a cornstalk pile, or was it?
Yeah, a bunch of corn stalks.
What could you see from there?
I could see the highway,
mm-hmm.
and in the woods is that way. But it's right outside of Little Rock. I was about 10 miles from it.
From North Little Rock, you think 10 miles?
Yeah, it was about 10 miles.
Okay.